your disposal.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a day one impression on Sayu. That's right, my friends, we are back in version 4.4 of Genshin Impact Genius Invokation TCG, and we have our 4 new characters this time around, which is such a surprise. Never expected that they would add more than 3 per patch, so it's a really big step up, you know, from what we got in previous patches. So that's super cool, and we were reviewing all of them. But today, the first character in line, of course, is Sayu. And the reason I picked Sayu is because I really don't think there's much more to innovate on outside of her kit. And speaking of which, if you're new to the First Impression series, here we just kind of talk about the entirety of the character's kit on release, as well as any of their deck building tips, tricks, etc. So with that out of the way, let's get started and talk about their kit. Take a look at some replays, my friends, and I also have a special guest today in the form of Dainsleaf, who is going to help explain the kit a little bit with the pronunciations for Sayu, because it's a little bit difficult to say all of these names so quickly. So let's jump into this strat right here. Yes, as we get past this dice roll, Sayu is an Anemo Claymore from Inazuma, and her normal attack does not do anything special and does not synergize anything with her kit, so that's pretty normal. As we get past this, all of the stuff about Sayu is really kind of centered around her skill, and her skill is really what makes her kind of the most interesting character, I would say, this patch. So let's get started right here with
the Yuhu art.
Fuing Dash. The Yuhu art Fuing Dash, when you initially cast it, is going to deal 1 Anemo damage. You can see right here as I do a cast, boom, and then it is going to apply a status. Now this status, if we go ahead and take a look at it, is the
Fufu Windwheel state.
This is a prepare skill,
the Fufu Whirlwind kick in the Fufu Windwheel state.
If the usage of this skill triggers swirl, then the Fufu Whirlwind kick is converted to the damage of the swirled element. Now, what does that look like? We will see it in just a moment, but yes, that's right. Sayu is going to do 1 bout of Anemo damage, and then if she absorbed any said Anemo damage, it will convert said damage of this Windwheel kick into the element that was swirled, in this case, Hydro. So now everyone is applied with Hydro, and that is kind of the main draw of Sayu's kit, is that she's great for turn 1 applying elements to everyone. That's right, everyone on the team here is now stuck with Hydro, and as I'm sure you all know, with the conventions of Mew with Wanderer, the whole idea is to have an endgame sweeping with Eula, because everyone is applied with Cryo, and what happens when you hit Hydro to Cryo? You get frozen, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now this is just the idea, but even faster, because now not only am I locked to spamming on Wanderer, if they specifically have something to stop my Wanderer in its tracks, I can now switch to Eula more freely and instantly get that. Once again, still using these abilities, simply deal 1 Anemo damage first, and then drop in after the status with the Fufu Whirlwind kick. That's such a funny name. But yes, while we are waiting for all this to, kind of for this match to sort of dull out with SaiMEW, I don't really think I need to explain much about it. Let's move on to the
Yuhu art.
Gina Flurry. Deals 1 Anemo damage on cast and summons
Muji Muji Daruma. Muji Muji Daruma.
The end phase is going to be a summon over here, and will deal 1 Anemo damage and heal your character on the team who has taken the most amount of damage for 2 HP. That's pretty okay. You gotta include Sayu's little aspect of healing in her kit, because she does that in the main game. It's a little of a shame that it doesn't heal on cast, because it also does that in the main game. Maybe it's a talent that is not super in, but yeah, it unfortunately does suffer kind of the same problem as Dory, who is a very similar Claymore. Does a 2/2 because a 2/3 burst, and as a result, it comes kind of late and doesn't really heal for a lot of value. But that's not the important part, of course. You're all here for the skill. And additionally, with the skill, we have her talent card, which I will go ahead and pull up right now since I didn't get a chance to play this match. But her talent card is on her skill, Skiving New and Improved. And as an equipment card, common action, you're going to use the skill once. And when you use this skill once, if you trigger the swirl reaction, you will instead draw 2 cards once per round, and that, my friends, is pretty freaking strong. Of course I didn't get to play this match, but we'll get to play next match, but basically for doing what your character is supposed to do, and with Sayu it's thankfully very nice and guaranteed. It's a pretty strong ability, and so much so that I would almost say that you'd really want to be able to run it and almost guarantee to draw it, because it cuts so much out of your draw that you need to run your action cards list. Like I wouldn't need to be running stuff like like, you know, like even to a crazier extent, like, you know, of course I wouldn't, Dunyarzad's not the best example, but I might not even need to run things that like guaranteed draw everything because I will be drawing so much. You're going to at least apply Sayu skill twice, and you know, as a result, stuff like that, you know, you're always going to draw 2 cards. As we're finishing up this match, here we go. Boom, boom, boom. Yep, again, it's Sayu, it's Mew gameplay, so I really don't think I need to explain too much here. Here's the action list, by the way, if you want to take a look. You can see the 3 claymores. Now, moving on from Sayu's kit, you know, again, it's I know I kind of did, you know, quick and done, because there really isn't too much to talk about. But yeah, this is, you know, this is kind of the entirety of Sayu's kit right here, just the Yuhu art, and that's pretty much it. And overall, I mean, there's not much you can, I haven't really seen much outside of this in the next deck that we'll take a look at. But one of the things I want to mention while we're still here on the Mew deck, and you know, ways you can start building decks, is claymore sharing. Because Sayu is a claymore, and claymores, if I'm being personally honest, are probably the strongest weapon in the game, mostly thanks to the facts of Wolf's Gravestone. Wolf's Gravestone really carries you know, this kind of stuff, as well as the addition of Beacon of the Red Sea. You know, I think this one's okay, but it's mostly Wolf's Gravestone. And the fact that you can share it between them two is pretty strong, because Sayu, as much as she doesn't deal a lot of upfront damage, can slowly chip down every opponent to a reasonable degree because she deals swirl damage. And as a result, you know, if you start equipping Sayu with even just a claymore, her damage is going to get boosted from 2 initial, and then further afterwards to 3, you know, of the swirl element. That's a lot of damage. And you know, it kind of just becomes a bowling ball of destruction that you can't really stop here, because now at the end, and of course the sharing part, I can push it over to Eula. And you know, there aren't a lot of claymores you know, in this game who I think can necessarily take significant advantage of this, but that is going to be you know, something to consider as you go forward with this. So that was actually one Mew game, and I think I might as well drop in another one, because I wasn't planning on this, but I think it's important to actually show a full set of gameplay. So here it is versus someone has jokingly called this Rapidash, as there's 2 two horse-like characters, even though one of them is a chicken. But you know what, we don't worry about that. The anatomy's the same, they all evolve from the same thing. I'm just kidding. But yes, here is another SaiMEW gameplay. You know, and I do like this match a lot, and we'll just kind of let it roll as we go and talk about more of Sayu stuff. Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Sayu's skill is, and I kind of call it there's a thing I call Lotus breakers in the game, where, you know, this is not the best example, of course, but pretend like this is Lotus here. And the thing about Lotus is that you need to hit it with that minimum of 1 damage to break it, right? And Lotus, of course, being one of the most powerful cards in the game, is something that everyone runs as a food, because it's, you know, the ultimate last resort. You know, if someone's about to totally just chip you apart. Now the thing is that you have things like coordinated damage, you know, for example, Xingqiu Yelen, you know, and of course new in this patch Toma, you know, stuff like that is not going to work unless you have those statuses up, where you can hit for initial and then hit again with something else. Sayu, you know, unlike most prepare skills, you know, for example, Beidou does not hit you whenever you first initially cast, or like Candace does not also hit you when you initially cast, is a little bit of a delayed Lotus breaker. She will do her original 1 animo damage first, and then afterwards also deal you know, damage of the swirl element, if any. And I think that is a pretty important thing to consider, because while most of the time I don't think you'll be surviving on Sayu very long unless you've added food, or you know, something like the bell on top, you know, to like kind of give her a little bit of HP. You know, you can still use it kind of as a breaker skill to stop people from, you know, having full defense against what you're trying to do. So that is definitely an interesting part of Yuhu art, and I'm honestly not sure. I don't think we have a lot of skills that are like this. Really only Dvalin is kind of the character I would say that has something like that, but that is super duper costly, being 5 dice, and of course Sayu is just very, very simple, you know, of course not as high damage either. Outside of that, I think I've covered for the most part you know, what I want to talk about. Sayu's main goal here is just to apply elements to everyone, and it is a shame that I really tried to make different teams. It's something I'll take a look at once we finish out this match, but I really couldn't find you know, much outside of the combination of Sayu and Mona. And that's not necessarily because Sayu is reliant on Mona, it's more that Mona you know, has such a valuable skill for animo characters, having this, you know, illusory torrent for fast swap, And in return, Sayu kind of has to rely on that, because if Sayu cannot get that turn 1 swirl, a little similar to Wanderer, but not so much, because Wanderer of course has boosted damage. He can deal 3/3/3 as much as he can do 3/3s. Sayu, if she doesn't swirl anything, she's gonna do 1 into 2, and that's a prepare skill. That's awful. Like, actually, you're really not gonna get too much out of it as a result. And I've tried Sayu in other decks, and unfortunately, without that ability to fast swap, I even tried like using Animo Res on turn 1 as kind of my means to get a fast swap in to guarantee my swirl. It still doesn't really feel the best, especially when you can get someone like Mona with such a high value skill and passive to kind of do the job for you. And we'll talk about a little more as we close out the match here. But yeah, one thing I will say is that Sayu also a little bit of a sacrifice, because you're always going to start with her and kind of shut down the characters, try and get those elements out there, and at that rate someone's gonna drop their damage on you. So don't expect her to survive very long, and that burst of course won't really save you. It's not really the strongest healing. As we end up the game, the reason I want to show this, it was a pretty quick match, but also once again just magic end games, as it do. Magic do what it do. Get to play the Gilded Dreams into that, and now I get a shatter bonus, and then I can bring it back again, and then I reduce it with Liar Song, and then I create 4 dice. I throw Senyata Flower in there for absolutely 0 reason. Don't run that card, at least in this deck. Senyata Flower has great usages, but not in this one. And then we go in, and then I have Gamblers, use Boar Princess from that, and now I have 3 dice. I get to hit another one with Grimheart stack. That's 6 damage with the freeze, and now I'm stacked up to 6 usages. And goodbye Seahorse, and boom. Okay, there they go. But yeah, this is SaiMEW. It's kind of the simplest one, and I think a lot of people will have an easy time building this deck. But I did have one bonus deck, kind of just to give a little bit of a pivot, so people have something a little more interesting if they're not really interested in playing, Mew again, because they love Wanderer so much. But here is KevinZayu, as I would call it, or just Kevin Z. I built this deck into the TCG discussion channel, so I'm like, okay, let's try this out. Looks pretty interesting. Of course, we'll show the deck list at the end. This is pretty standard outside of the coin we're sharing, in Wagner's, and then, this one has all kinds of stuff going on, kind of cheesing out artifact reductions as well as Sack Sword, and the talent with Storm Terrors, because it really is that strong. Before we get into that, the last topic I wanted to talk about before we jump into the kind of bonus match is this one right here. This is what I'm experimenting with, and you might be wondering, okay, well, this is a really weird combination of characters, Kojo. Why are you doing this? Well, it is going to be the idea of Fatui Res, and the reason I put Fatui Res in here is because I feel like Sayu's potential, as we move forward, with this is, outside of being able to apply elements instantly, is kind of gonna be with someone who can have an interrupt skill, because it's a prepare skill. You swirl first, and then they in turn will have to do an action before you do the second part of your skill. Now this of course is where Fatui Conspiracy can come in, is which your opponent needs to perform an action to actually get past to the next phase of the skill. Now, if you just swapped, you would just swap into someone who got their elements swirled, and then I'm going to hit you, which, while, that's definitely a better option, in return, you're delaying your abilities, and, having to swap stall, especially on, more aggressive decks, is definitely not the best thing to do. Of course, the reason I didn't showcase the deck is because it was generally not very smooth. Didn't really feel the best, so we're just gonna kind of stick with what works. But it is something to consider as we move in, because as I'm going to move in the match, I'm going to talk about a little bit of elemental application and the things that matter about it, because the thing about elemental application is that it's incredibly valuable in this game, and people assume just like, oh well, it's like, I got 3 elements, it's gonna be fine, but it's really not. When you have situations like this, and especially with the element of Animo, what happens is that you can apply all the elements, but if you accidentally swirl a different element, so the example is that I have 2 Hydro on here, and I have Electro here, and then I swirl all of them, you'll get one big hit, seems really scary, but then after that you're screwed. You don't have any more elemental application, and then you need to do your whole setup again. So you really need to keep that in mind. It is unfortunate that, like, it doesn't really work like that, but yeah, see, here we go, we got a swap, and now Official is without elements, nice for her, but I will immediately get that back. But yeah, it's definitely something to consider, that you don't want to waste all your elemental application in one go, and we'll showcase that as we get through this match. But yeah, this is sort of the KevinZayu deck. It's pretty much the same mentality as SaiMEW. You know, you want to spread Hydra to everyone, and then Kaching is super valuable on her skill with Stiletto, so you can surprise people with the Stiletto. But otherwise, there really isn't too much else to it. The combination of artifacts, especially with Shiminawa's Reminiscence, I think is definitely a good call, because, you know, of course, like I said earlier, you're really not going to use Sayu's burst almost ever. So you know, you might as well take advantage of the bonus of this, of course, with artifact engines existing, you know, because you're already going to reduce them. Well, why don't you grab one that actually benefits you from bursting? So that's definitely a cool idea. Shiminawa has always been a cool card I never really pay attention to, because of the bonus damage that it gives when you have at least 2 energy, you know, mirroring the game, you know, not using draining energy from your burst. You know, that's a pretty cool mechanic. There we go. So now you can see, boom. There we go. I spread out Hydra to everyone. Kaching is now starting to deal a lot more damage as a result. And then I'm just going to pivot back to Mona, make them lose an application of Oz. One thing also, it's kind of a note that I didn't really put down on my sheet, but Storm Terror's Lair is an interesting card because Sayu's skill is so valuable, or her talent card, that you kind of wonder if you want to run it. Because like I said earlier, if you could run less draw in your deck, and, you know, replace it with more valuable cards, let's say like food, you know, another example is like, you know, more artifacts. You know, realistically, I don't think you have a lot of room to usually run things like Shiminawa's Reminiscence as a result. You know, that is a very valuable thing, and otherwise you're realistically not using Storm Terrors for anything else, like I just did there, but to draw this talent, even though I already have it equipped just for the -1 on Stiletto. But, you know, it is something to consider, you know, with Sayu, because being able to do that is just such a strong thing. And, you know, otherwise your opponent, you know, being able to draw everything out, you know, just by existing is a pretty strong thing. One of the other jokes, you know, as we kind of lay out this match, you know, let it play through, I don't know why you swapped to Kaching. There's not the best idea. Definitely getting on the frisky side of things. We are running out of HP. But someone has jokingly said that it's like, oh, to counter Sayu, you just play Joyous. But of course, who's actually going to play Joyous? Am I right? Oh, man. But yes, we will finish out this round here. Drop a Lotus. Push into Stiletto, because it's the only choice I have. And there's Sayu having a little bit of a brick situation, because, you know, I don't have any element on you. So it's not really worth it for me to skill, because I would also just die. And then I'm gonna have to put Sayu. Here's a sacrifice. They play Gamblers. I'm not too worried about it. Swap right over to Mona. I get a free Electro Charge. Also get to do a Boar Princess Slam. There we go. Gamblers, take it off. Boom. Do that. Shock. Now I have more dice advantage. So they need to have 2 Wovens, you know, and tune 2 cards, which I don't think is gonna happen considering what's left in their hand. There we go. They get a Superconduct on me, but it's over. GG's. Very fun deck. I really do like seeing Shiminawa's actually being played, because it is a very cool card, has a lot of potential. But yeah, those are kind of the few decks I had with Sayu. I will show the other Fatui res deck, and I'll leave it in like the comments. You know, I just really want to put it up like up front, because it's not the goal of this series is not to just put whatever and then just hope it sticks, you know, because it clearly doesn't. You know, this clearly doesn't stick, and it's a shame that, you know, affinities are very difficult to come by, because Fatui affinity is super duper limited. You know, and what they have a very limited amount of characters. Klee is a potential thing, you know, but Klee's burst, of course, does take a little bit to get out, even with her reduced charged attacks. You know, it still takes a while. It's 3 energy. You know, you have a lot to do, when I could just draw a card and do effectively the same thing, and for a longer duration. But yeah, so here's the deck for that one. And here is the other 2 for MES or SaiMEW. I think I like SaiMEW as a better name, as well as KevinZ's SaiMEW. Or, well, you know, more with Kaching. But yeah, and I will showcase these all. Yeah, but yeah, this is Sayu. You know, she's pretty simple, and, you know, I picked her because I really didn't think there's much to innovate on, you know, outside of it, which is a shame. I'm sure if we get more interruption skills, as I call them, you know, with Klee, as well as, you know, Fatui res, I think she could do something potentially there, because you have 2 instances of damage, so your opponent has to choose between either taking that damage or, you know, triggering an effect which would cause them to, you know, get lose the abilities of their skill, or slow down the match in a way that is not favorable to them. But yeah, that is pretty much all I have to say about Sayu, and let's go ahead and flip over to here where we have all the deck lists right here. Here we go, and here we go. There's the Mew, and there is SaiMEW. So all the fun stuff. This is Sayu in her greatest form. But yeah, that is all I have to talk about today. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to join GITCG Discord. We're still hanging out. We're taking a bit of a break with tournaments. So if you're wondering why the uploads are very slow, I of course, we're trying to take a break after a whole year of tournaments. Hats off to the staff for such a wonderful job. And but that doesn't mean content is going to stop on the channel. I'm still going to be working on the channel. I just don't have to worry about running tournaments over the weekends. But yeah, that is all I have for today's first impressions of Sayu, and I hope you'll enjoy. Leave a like and subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.